This past week, lawmakers in the House and Senate moved forward with bills aimed at restricting or banning TikTok in the U.S. The massively popular video app has come under increased national security concerns because TikTok is a Chinese-owned company that collects a vast amount of data on its millions of American users. U.S. officials worry the Chinese Communist Party could access that information. Joining us right now to discuss this is Congressman Krishnamoorthi. He is a Democrat from Illinois and is the ranking member on the House Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. Congressman, good to see you. Ooh, that was a mouthful. All
yes,
right.
like my name, Federica.
Yes, and the titles, all of the accolades behind that, too. All right, so this past week, a dozen U.S. senators unveiled bipartisan proposed legislation expanding President Joe Biden's legal authority to ban TikTok nationwide. House versions range from bans to restrictions. So what do you support when it comes to TikTok?
Well, I support my own bill, which is the only bicameral bipartisan bill in Congress. Basically, what it would say is very simple. Either a social media app such as TikTok, controlled by an adversarial regime, in this case, the Chinese Communist Party, should not be allowed to operate, or that it should be forced to sell its assets, its company to, for instance, an American company that would control the user data and algorithm that provides the content for more than 100 million users in America.
So it sounds like your bill does not necessarily propose giving authority to the president to just simply shut it down.
Well, basically it would go a little further in terms of making sure that we are not subject to, potential adversarial actions by the Chinese Communist Party or others. Christopher Wray testified before the Intelligence Committee, on which I sit, in the worldwide threats hearing on Wednesday, and he made it very clear that he could not rule out that the Chinese Communist Party, for instance, directed TikTok and employees recently to track the location information of journalists who were writing negative stories about TikTok. Nor could he rule out that TikTok was using various means of quote unquote heating or pushing certain content at the direction of the Chinese Communist Party. So this is very disturbing.
So for the millions of Americans who use and love this app, help us understand why so many lawmakers, including yourself, are so concerned about TikTok and believe at a minimum there need to be some new restrictions.
Sure. So TikTok is owned by a company called ByteDance. ByteDance is a Chinese company that has to abide by two laws, at least two laws that are problematic. The first is that ByteDance is required to comply with an intelligence law in the People's Republic of China that requires that any user data be provided to the Chinese Communist Party regarding users anywhere in the world, including the United States. And ByteDance is not allowed to disclose when it does so. So that's the first point. The second is a Chinese Communist Party cell, a CCP cell, is embedded within ByteDance. And it turns out that the editor-in-chief of ByteDance is the secretary of that cell. And he has said that all of its products must adhere to correct political attitudes. And so what that practically means is that the CCP ultimately controls the content on TikTok. And you can look to Christopher Wray again, who said that he would not put it past the CCP to help to shape American public opinion through that particular directive under Chinese law.
So just looking at, that reel of video that we just showed, the variety of ways in which TikTok is used. I mean, cooking is one way. It's also become a very popular social media platform for activists, who want to promote change. I mean, a recent push by climate change activists using the hashtag #StopWillow aimed at blocking oil drilling in the Alaska wilderness has taken TikTok by storm. So what do you say to those who worry that a ban or certain restrictions on TikTok actually curtails a lot of good things that happen?
Sure. I don't think TikTok is going to go dark. I think rather it would be forced to sell to, for instance, an American company who would allow this same content, the popular positive content that you talked about. But let me just submit for your viewers' respectful consideration another issue, which is that when certain activists go on TikTok to criticize the Uyghur genocide that's happening at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party, that content is censored on TikTok. And the same is true with regard to other dissenters. And so, we have to ultimately make sure that, neither our user data nor the algorithms are controlled by adversarial regimes like the CCP.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me shift gears, if I may, to that stunning collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. I mean, it's the second biggest bank failure in U.S. history now, and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen just weighed in on the government's role in the aftermath of this bank collapse. Take a listen.
Let me be clear that during the financial crisis, there were investors and owners of systemic large banks that were bailed out, and we're certainly not looking, and the reforms that have been put in place means that we're not going to do that again.
All right, your oversight committee Republican colleague, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, agreeing on that, saying on CNN today that she does not support a bailout at this time. So what do you think the government should or should not do in response to that bank collapse?
Well, I don't disagree with Secretary Yellen with regard to a bailout of investors, but the question is the depositors, Frederica. The depositors often are small businesses that are trying to make payroll next week, and their deposits are locked up right now. And so if you think about, those people who benefit from payroll, they are not necessarily tech billionaires. They are just ordinary folks who are relying on a paycheck from those companies, and they can't get paid if those deposits are kind of at risk right now. So that's kind of the big concern that I'm hearing.
And it's a concern, but do you believe that the government should be stepping in and assisting in that way?
Well, I think the FDIC should do everything in its power as soon as today to kind of reassure those depositors that their money will be available. And again, that these people who are relying on these paychecks are going to be taken care of.
All right. Maybe that's the bank, or maybe that's the Treasury Secretary giving you a call. All right. Congressman.
Or the CCP. I'm not really sure.
That's right. You're very important. All right. Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi, thank you so much. Appreciate it.